Hi, Warren. Thank you for joining us. And being part of our event is corporate responsibility key to sustainability. This is a really kind of unique insight in what we're going to be looking at right now is your epic adventure you took on in 2017. So you co-wrote the book Walk with Us, describing your 6-month journey in 2017 where you climbed Kilimanjaro and walked 6,000 kilometers, crossing 6 countries, all while living only on $2 a day. So I suppose my first question to you is, what inspired you to take on this epic journey?
So, what inspired us to take on this journey? The story started a long time ago. I was in high school at the time, and every Thursday afternoon we used to have leadership talks where different speakers would come in. And on one particular Thursday, we had a man by the name of Tabang Squambane come and talk to us. Now, Tabang had also gone to our school, and he had gone on to university, and he's doing really well for himself in a finance career. He had bought himself a house, he had a nice car, and he was doing really well. Except Tabang had a slightly different background to many of us from our school, in that he had some family in a community in Limpopo province in South Africa, which is a rural area without many resources. Tabang went on a trip to this community to meet with the leaders to understand what their needs were. And in this meeting, he sat there and they were discussing, and he heard a constant scraping sound at the door. When he realized that no one else was doing anything about it, he got up, he walked over to the door and opened it to find 22-month-old Selo Moloto, a little girl sitting, scraping the door with an empty plate because she was hungry. Tabang was absolutely horrified by this, and so he looked around to the rest of the room to try and understand what was happening. And these community leaders had to explain to him that, as heartbreaking as it was, they didn't have the resources to care for her, and that Selo was going to have to learn how to look after herself. So feeling moved by this, Tabang decided to give up everything. He gave up his job, he sold the cars and the house, and he decided he was going to cycle from Johannesburg to Kilimanjaro before summiting the mountain. So Tabang set off, and this was roughly a 6,000 kilometer journey, and he was faced with hunger, he had no money, he depended on other people. At one point he even got hit by a truck. He encountered snakes, a lion at one point, but he made it. He made it to that mountain and he made it to the top. And out of that, he raised the funds to start an organization caring for children in rural communities. That organization today is called Alawani. So fast forward a few years, having been incredibly moved by his story, I was at university and I decided to go and do an internship at this organization. So I got the chance to go spend a bit of time with Alawani, and there I got to spend some time in the community, in Hadley. And this is where I really got exposed to the incredible work that was being done, to the true heroes of the story. And these were the mothers in the community caring for their children, not just their children, the children of others, with the very little that they had. So, inspired by this, myself and a friend, Tom, we decided that we were going to recreate the challenge. And so 10 years down the line, even though there was this mountain to still climb, the road was a little bit less lonely and that we were taking this on together. So we decided we were going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and we were going to walk back to Johannesburg, walking about 40 k's a day. And we were doing this to raise funds for early childhood development, for Alawani, and for awareness around the needs of children in rural communities.
So that really is an inspirational story, and I can really understand your motivations on why you took on this journey and this adventure. But during this journey, you lived on $2 a day. So from my understanding, it was because this was equivalent to those who lived on the poverty line in your part of the world. But why did you think this was a really important part to incorporate as part of your journey?
So I think we acknowledged early on that we were never truly going to understand the lives that these people led. But by committing to live on the food poverty line, this was at least an effort to try and relate as much as possible. And by taking so little with us, it made us incredibly vulnerable and just open to the experiences along the way.
So how did you deal with this? Was it tough? Did you have to dramatically change any of your eating habits, diets, and did it cause you any big problems?
So yes, it did. It was tough. We had a few issues with it along the way, and we had so little on us. And we were walking about 40 k's a day, so we needed that nutrition to get through the day. But, and yeah, I think there was at one point we even found ourselves for a 3-day period only having some fruit and a handful of nuts. And we managed to find different things in different places, but it really was incredibly difficult. We would wake up each day not knowing where we were going to find food or if we were going to find food. But the fact that we had so little meant that we had to depend on the kindness of others. And by being so vulnerable, we really exposed ourselves to some of our most beautiful experiences and some of the most beautiful people.
So I suppose that's bittersweet. So you struggle to eat and keep your normal eating habits you're used to, but you got to experience the kindness of others you never would have experienced in any other environment. But this was only one aspect of your challenge you faced. So while dealing with that, you also had to climb the highest mountain in Africa. This must have taken a good level of fitness, but more so greater inner strength. Was this strength something you already had built in you, or did you have to discover new limits in yourself to achieve what you did? If so, how did you find this extra strength?
So, this is an interesting one. I think there was a massive physical element to it, and I think we tried to prepare for it as much as we could. We had about a 40-kilometer route around our city. We would wake up with full bags with books, and we would set off, and we would hike around the mountain, over the mountain, and get back to one of our houses. And this was taking us about 9 hours. And leading up to the walk, we did this a couple of times a week. And we thought we were well prepared. But what we hadn't catered for was the fact that at the end of our training walks, we were getting into a comfortable bed and we had a hot shower and a good meal waiting for us. And so I think there were much bigger parts to this challenge than there were physical. And the mental and emotional aspect of that was an incredibly significant part of this. And so, did it exist in us already? I believe it did. Maybe we just weren't aware of it. And in fact, I believe that that is in everyone. But it comes down to knowing your why. And I think understanding why we made that commitment is what got us through. When we started that journey, when we took our first step, we knew that we had made a commitment to those mothers in the community and to those children, to the organization that was supporting us, to our friends and family who had gotten behind us, and to each other and to ourselves. So when we took that first step, we knew that we had to get through this.
There's a couple of really good points you've kind of made there, which is, I suppose, firstly, is about finding a why and what really motivates you. And that's something all of us should be able to adapt to every part of our lives, really understanding why you do what you do to keep that motivation going. And the other kind of point you raised there is no matter how much you practice, until you actually throw yourself into it and actually commit to doing something, you never really know really your true strength about yourself and what you can achieve. But with this along your journey, you also met many people from different backgrounds and societies. So while keeping to that budget, naturally you wouldn't have having to be able to eat at the best restaurants or even stop at places like McDonald's. I'm presuming this forced you to integrate more in real day-to-day lives of societies you visited so you can learn and maybe match how the poorer communities survive and feed each other each day so that you yourself could eat. This must have given you a unique perspective of lives most people would never see. Do any of your experiences or the people you met really stick out to you today?
It is an incredibly difficult question to answer because there were so many incredible people that we met along the way and so many beautiful experiences that we had. But I think if we had to boil it down to one story, it was about 2 weeks into Tanzania. We were still very new to this, and we knew that we had a big day coming up. A lot of people had been warning us along the way that walking up into the highlands was going to be incredibly tough. So we set off on this day, not really knowing too much what to expect. We had packed a little bit of extra food because we knew that we might have to camp on the side of the road. And off we went, and it was an unbelievably hot day, over 30 degrees heat, and we found ourselves walking uphill for almost 50 k's. It ended up actually being the longest day that we did on the walk. And one of the rules that we had made was that we weren't going to walk at night, but we didn't have a choice at this stage. Once we saw that there was a bit of activity and we realized there was a village nearby, we were desperate to get there. And so we kept going, and eventually we arrived in this village at about 8 p.m. It was dark and we didn't know where to go. Not many people spoke English, and up to this point, normally when we got to a village, there was a police station or a school or somewhere that we could find a bit of help. But there was no police station and the school was closed. And so we found this little shop, and absolutely finished, we just went and sat next to the shop, and I don't think we could even look at each other. We were just exhausted. We didn't know what we were going to do next. We didn't know how we were going to find food. We didn't know where we were going to sleep. And eventually this girl came and tapped one of us on the shoulders, and we didn't really understand what was going on, but she told us to follow her. So in broken English, we started chatting to her, and we walked with her down this dirt road, and she explained to us that we had a place to stay. What happened is that her mother was actually working at that shop, and when she saw us sitting there absolutely finished, she just opened up her hearts to us, to two guys who, to be honest, were not looking good, not smelling good, and she didn't know us at all. We couldn't even speak her language, but she could tell that we needed help. And so her daughter, Coletta, took us to her own home and gave us a bed. We slept there for the night, and only waking up the next morning did we realize that Coletta had actually given up her own bed and that she had spent the night on the couch. So I think as one story that stands out to us, and we ask ourselves the question, if we were back home to see two men that didn't look so good, didn't smell so good, couldn't speak our language, and they needed help, would we offer it to them? And I think that question often bothers us. And if the answer is no, then there's a follow-up question, why not? And I think that's a big part of what this walk has taught us and what it continues to teach us.
So it seems a bit strange to hear to someone like myself and other people maybe watching that it seems that those who seem to have so little are willing to share so much. It's kind of beautiful to see, but it also does make you question, why isn't the rest of the world seem to be like that? Or those which are, why aren't they shouted about more so than hearing any kind of the negative news we can become accustomed to in the media all the time? But how do these people resonate with you? Was it just a case of you feeling more grateful of your situation, upbringing you had, or was it more?
So there is no doubt that we became very aware of our privileges and, of course, very grateful for what we've had. But I think beyond that, we realized that there was so much to learn from these people. Maybe sometimes we look down on communities that have less than us as being less than us, and that is completely wrong. We found people that were unbelievably tenacious, hardworking, loving, willing to open their homes, and above all, they were happy, and they showed us how little you need to be happy. And so more than just being grateful for what we have, we were able to learn from them and what they have.
That really is a beautiful lesson to take from it. But it's a lesson I think that most of us have been raised with, not take for granted the things you've been given. But it's something which I think sometimes we tend to forget, getting locked into our day-to-day lives. And we kind of need that reminding that we are part of something which is much bigger. So you co-wrote this book to share these experiences like this with other people. And you've gone on to give inspirational and motivational talks. So you naturally took a lot from this experience. So what are the main lessons you took away and the knowledge you look to pass to others?
So there are a number of lessons and lessons that we like to share. I think the first one, which I've already referenced, is knowing your why and understanding why you're committing to something before you do. But beyond that, I think there is a big one in learning to trust, and that is trusting in yourself and trusting in others. We learned a lot about the inherent kindness of people. And as I said before, living on $2 a day and being so exposed and so vulnerable, we really were dependent on this kindness of others, and we became so exposed to the beauty in that. So I think maybe we taught to be fearful of others, and there's this sense of self-preservation. But I believe by opening ourselves up to others, good things will come. On top of that, I think there's a big part of it where Tom and I had to trust in each other. Every day when we were committing to this, it was just the two of us on the road, and we needed each other to get there. There was one day in particular, it was actually a bit of a routine for us. When we woke up in the morning and we would pack up our tent, and once we put our shoes on and we tied our laces, the day had started. And there was a day in Zambia, and we just had about 40 k's to go to get into Livingstone, which we knew was going to be a bigger city, maybe a little bit more happening, a bigger chance of finding some help. But I was absolutely broken and I couldn't put shoes on. And actually, I think ultimately I started that day in sandals. But just struggling to get out of bed, I was able to look over at Tom and see him tying his laces. And because he was committing, it reminded me that I'd committed to him too. And I was able to get through that day. And then there's also learning to trust in yourself. And we spoke about it a little bit earlier, about what we are capable of. Is it inside us? Or maybe there are things inside of us that we don't know yet. And once you really put yourself to the test, you can discover these things. But then I think our biggest one is embracing our privileges and understanding the responsibility that comes with that. When we returned home to Johannesburg with all of our friends and family waiting there for us, we made a commitment when we spoke to them, telling them that above all else, while we had raised funds and we were looking forward to creating some impact with that, the biggest thing is that we had ingrained in us a responsibility to be more conscious and contributing towards society. And that is the big message that we would like to share. It's about finding a cause that resonates with you, or causes that resonate with you, and understanding what you can do with your privileges, with your time, with your money, with your skill sets. It doesn't have to be the same for everyone, but we all, as members of society, have something to give and to uplift others.
So following that, has meeting the people you have and experiencing living on the poverty line make you question who you give business to then, who you can trust, what businesses you can trust? In a sense, do you live more by questioning what the companies are doing to help before you give them money or services?
Another very interesting question. So, are we more aware of it? Absolutely. I think after gaining that perspective, it is perspective that can't be lost. And so, do we want to be more conscious in the way that we live and work and consume? Absolutely. But I think there's often a gap in how that relates to reality. And with that actually comes a bit of guilt. And this is a constant road that we continue to walk. And it is a journey. It's something where you start and something that you can get better at as you go. So yes, we do try. And I think there's a responsibility to support businesses that are uplifting communities, uplifting society, and that are conscious in the way that they're doing business. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be in the products that they're selling, but it's in the way they do their business, the way they treat their people, and about the companies that they do business with too. And it all becomes part of a bigger solution, and we can all play a small part in that.
I couldn't agree with you more, to be honest. And that leads us to the theme of this event, which is about the importance of corporate responsibility and it being key to sustainable futures. So a lot of companies are running their own CSR projects, some with great intentions, others are just kind of catching on the trend as it is becoming an expectation by consumers. But there is also still a large amount of organizations not giving back to communities and societies. So your experience was in Africa. So how do you think your experiences really resonate with those corporations still not helping societies around the world who they themselves are not based in Africa? And how do you think helping societies like the ones you met could be of benefit to these corporations?
So I think companies have both a responsibility to contribute to society at large, but I think it is bigger than that. It is about aligning incentives. I think for companies to succeed and for them to thrive, they need communities around them to thrive too. So whether that is investing in people that could ultimately become their consumers, people that could become their talent that they want to hire, or whether it is people that are contributing to an ecosystem that uplifts an environment that they work in, I think there is a holistic solution to that. And so whether it is in one specific community or another, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. Maybe it's easier to look immediately to your surroundings, but there's a lot to be learned from the way other people are doing things and the way that companies can contribute to that.
I suppose if we take this one step further, if you had the opportunity to talk to all the private companies in the world, where you could try to pass on the lessons you've learned from your journey to get them to start helping and finding resolutions to helping all global societies, but you only had 60 seconds to talk, what do you think you would say?
I believe as individuals that we have a responsibility to be conscious and contributing towards society. Our biggest contributions towards society come from organizations, come from companies, and it comes from the governmental level. But those decisions are still made by individuals. So at the end of the day, I think it comes down to us as individuals, as humans, understanding the role that we play in our society and in our environment. It comes down to aligning incentives. And so the way we act, the decisions we make, and the way that works for the rest of society should be about trying to achieve a better outcome for everyone and uplifting those around us.
Yeah, I hope there's a number of corporations watching this right now and kind of getting motivated to do more if they're able. I mean, continuing to develop the way the world has been going is proving time and time again it's not sustainable. Populations are increasing and greed has seemed to become embedded in our survival instincts. You've seen firsthand the damage of leaving others behind and forgetting communities. So you do get some standout individuals who take the opportunity to leave their communities in search for something more, but this doesn't help the communities left, except potentially less mouths to feed. Ideally, we would find ways in supporting whole communities instead of just selected individuals. So I suppose a number of people watching this at the moment, they don't run their own corporations. So to make it relevant for them, where they don't work in high positions, some maybe are students, future entrepreneurs, and those which want to be a voice to advise current and future businesses. So what would you say to those? So if you had a 60-second pitch to those, so that they could have this more in the forefront of their mindset when they start to look at embarking on new projects, businesses, and careers.
I think this comes down to what I've just said about how where decisions are made at an organizational level, there are still individuals behind those decisions. So it's about understanding your responsibility, responsibility that comes with privileges and with ability to contribute to society at large. So whether that is at a school organization or university or in your company, or whether it's on a personal level that you're doing in your own free time, I would recommend that you find a starting point and find a cause that resonates with you, one that you can contribute to with your time, with your resources, and with your skill set. And as I said earlier, this is a journey. By finding something and contributing towards it and understanding that the impact you can make will set the tone for the responsibility that you have when you make decisions as you get older, as you progress throughout your career. And those bigger decisions start to sit with you.
Well, thank you so much, Warren, for sharing your experience and your kind of epic adventure you went on and the lessons you learned along the way. There's one kind of point there, I suppose. There's many points you've raised, which are great. But one which really resonates to me from the last bits you've just said is about how we're part of something bigger. We all have a responsibility to try and make a positive change. And it's not about just helping ourselves. If we can try and help everyone together as a collective, then we do end up as a byproduct helping ourselves. For those who's watching who aren't aware, you are also an ambassador of Youth Time International Movement after attending previous inspirational events and to help make our events and activities come together. So just to finish off, could you give your opinion on how important organizations such as Youth Time are and why people should actively engage in as many similar organizations and activities as possible?
I think the biggest thing to be learned through Youth Time and from these Youth Time events is perspective and context. I remember when I attended the Youth Global Forum in Amsterdam about a year and a half ago, I think there were people from over 60 countries in that session. And when we discuss problems, you start to understand the problems that people are trying to solve, but also the lens through which they're trying to solve it. And there's a lot to learn from that. I think often we start to look at things in silos, but by exposing yourself to other people, other cultures, the way they do things, there's so much to be learned. And I think even through this experience, I've come out with lifelong friends, I've come out inspired, and I've come out with a lot of lessons just from the way people are working with their communities to try and solve problems. And it's really gone a lot further than one event that I attended.
Well, thank you very much, Warren, for your kind words. And that is what our kind of mission is about for our Greater World Youth. But I will stress, though, that even though we want as many people to attend and enjoy our activities, to take lessons, to learn new experiences, and to network on an international level, we're not the only NGO out there. And I would push for you to try and get involved in as many NGOs and other organizations set up to help the Greater World Youth as possible. There's free education, it's free experiences to try and take as much as you can to try and help gain the best kind of position to make a positive impact in the world going forward. So just to kind of wrap things up, thank you very much again, Warren, for being here and sharing your experiences. If anyone wants to hear more about your story and your epic adventure, they can look onto the online platforms like Amazon and places like that, where they can purchase your book, Walk With Us. And again, thank you for your time, Warren.
Great. Thank you, Michael. I've really enjoyed this and I really appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. And thank you for the incredibly insightful questions. I look forward to doing this again soon. Thank you. Aluwani started under the name The Lonely Road when the founder, Tabangs Kombane, cycled unsupported from Johannesburg to Kilimanjaro before summiting the mountain. And that was as a symbol to represent that no child should ever walk the journey of life alone.
My name's Tom.
I'm Warren.
And we're about to walk from Kilimanjaro in Tanzania back to Johannesburg in South Africa through 6 different countries, walking about 40 km a day.
When we tell people we're about to do this walk, people think we're absolutely crazy.
People think that we're probably going to die.
Especially our parents.
But we're excited.
It's been a tough day. Earlier it was about 30-35 degrees plus, and now we've just walked into some rain. But it's also the pain of these days that remind us how privileged we are to have this opportunity. Apart from having been sick a couple of days ago with a bit of the shivers and throwing up, we spoke to Tom's dad, who's a doctor. He has recommended that we skip the 40k walk tomorrow and then actually go get checked out, because it sounds like a possibility of malaria. We haven't seen food since about 7 a.m. We're about 30 kilometers in, and now it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we are both out of water. it's been a bit of a tough process. I don't know if you found the same thing, but I think we went from a very difficult life, but a very simple life, where we were focusing on basic needs, coming back into this fast-paced, materialistic, superficial lifestyle, and trying to hold on to those core lessons that we had learned along the way.
That, for me, is what the inspiration is all about, is that people say they're going to do things and they go out and do it. And what you guys managed to do is stay true to your word and remain committed.
Thank you to everyone who supported us along the way, our donors, our families, our friends, and the strangers along the way that actually made it possible.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you to everyone for working with us.